My mandibles click twice. The ceremonial rhythm. 2 clicks for order, 1 for dissent, and 400 delegates fall silent in the cradle chamber. I am Chief Archivist Threll Vosh Kaith, 3rd segment of the Osseran Concord, and I have sat in this chamber for 11 molts. I have watched us catalog the rise and fall of 91,000 recorded civilizations. I have watched us fold entire species into a single data shard, a tidy obituary, a lesson for the next ambitious young world foolish enough to reach for the stars before it understands what waits for it out here. Today we are folding another one. The motion, I announce, is for the great effacement of species designation Homo sapiens, Terran origin, Sol system, spiral arm sector 9. My throat sac pulses a slow, satisfied amber. Amber means routine. Amber means this will not take long. Because here is what I know, what every delegate in this chamber knows, what has been true since before my grandmother's grandmother first split from the egg cluster. Humanity is nothing. A single world, a blink of a civilization, maybe 11,000 years old by their own reckoning, no more than a rounding error against a galaxy this old. They never left their solar system in any meaningful way before we found them. They fight each other more than they build. Their history is one long, embarrassing tantrum. Swords, then muskets, then 100 years of setting their own atmosphere on fire for sport. And then they invented something they call the weekend, and mostly just complained about being tired. They are, and I say this with the full confidence of a being who has read 700 pages of their military doctrine and 800 pages of their sitcom scripts, utterly insignificant. I raise the effacement token, a smooth black stone, cool against the chitin of my forelimb, and I am one motion away from ending this species' entry in the Concord's memory forever. Not conquering them, not studying them further, erasing the record of them so that in 10,000 years no one will remember humanity existed at all. The vote begins. 91,000 species have gone into that stone before. Humanity will be number 91,001, or so I believe, for exactly 4 more seconds. The chamber doors do not open quietly. They never do. 6 meters of reinforced alloy, built to keep atmosphere in and predators out during the Concord's founding wars, 1,000 generations before anyone here was hatched. When they open mid-session, it is an act of violence against protocol itself. They open now. A single figure crosses the threshold. Ensign Ovik Dalren, Data Directorate 6th Segment, young, barely past his 2nd molt, carapace still glossy with adolescent shine, and shaking. Not with fear. I know fear. I have seen fear in 91,000 species worth of final testimonies. This is something else. His throat sac is flaring a color I don't have a clean word for. Somewhere between the blue-white of astonishment and the hard red of you are all about to be wrong. He is carrying a data shard the size of his own thorax. Hold the vote, he says. 400 delegates turn. My own throat sac flickers, amber curdling toward a wary gray. Ensign, I say, the effacement of a Tier 9 insignificant species does not require directorate input. This is a formality. It's not insignificant, he says. That's the problem. It was never insignificant. Someone buried the file. The chamber does the thing 400 delegates do when they are all trying not to look surprised at once. Nothing. Perfect professional stillness. I have been in this chamber long enough to know that stillness like this is worse than shouting. Explain, I say, and I set the effacement stone down. Just for now. Just to hear him out before I pick it back up and finish what should have been finished 30 seconds ago. Ovik plants the shard into the reader plinth at the center of the floor, and the air above it blooms into light. 10 years ago, he says, High Command opened a research program, classified low priority, filed under Xenobiology, Curiosities Division. The subject was human sleep. Someone in the back laughs. A dry clatter of mandibles, the Asuran equivalent of a snort. I don't blame them. Sleep. We could be voting on a species that split the atom before they discovered fire, and instead we're talking about naps. 10 years, Ovik says again. Quieter now, like he's still not sure he believes it himself. 14 research stations, 300 embedded observers, the largest sustained xenobiological study in conquered history that nobody outside this room has ever heard of. And what? I ask. Did 14 research stations conclude about a species falling unconscious for a third of every day? Ovek looks up at me. His throat sac is not flickering anymore. It is locked into a single, steady, unbroken shade of dread. They didn't conclude anything, he says. That's why I'm here. Command shut the program down 8 months ago. Not because they solved it. Because they couldn't. The lights in the cradle chamber were built for the Asuran eye. Soft, blue, dim enough to let our carapace sheen do the talking. Ovek's shard doesn't care about our eyes. It floods the chamber white, and the first image punches through the dark like a blade. A human soldier, standing upright, asleep, not slumped, not seated, standing, rifle slung, chin dipped, in a trench line thick with mud and the tang of expended propellant. Other humans moving past him without a second glance. Sentries have done this for as long as they've kept sentries, Ovek says. Microsleep. Seconds at a time, sometimes minutes, while the conscious mind believes it never stopped watching. A murmur runs the chamber. We do not do this. No species cataloged in 91,000 files does this. Sleep, for every civilization we have ever documented, is a retreat, a closing of the doors. A species that sleeps while standing in a war is a species that has broken one of the fundamental design constraints of a nervous system. That's a curiosity, I say, though my throat sac has gone the gray of a delegate no longer certain of amber. Not a reason to halt an effacement vote. Then explain this. The image changes. A cargo hold. Cramped, dim, smelling, the file notes, absurdly specific scent data, of oil and recycled air. 4 humans asleep in a space built for 2. One of them has an arm draped protectively over a child who is not his. Merchant vessel Terran registry. Attacked by raiders 11 years before first contact, Ovek says. Survivors adrift for 6 days. Sleep cycles, according to onboard biometrics, remained largely stable. Cortisol should have spiked past survivable thresholds within 40 hours. It didn't. Adrenal tolerance, someone offers from the delegate benches. A biological quirk, nothing more. I thought so too, Ovek says. Until the next file. Erased, not conquered. Erased. That's the phrase that flashes across the shard's summary header on the next entry. And it isn't about a species. It's about a city. An entire coastal settlement, Terran designation Nagasaki, obliterated by the human's own hand in a war against other humans, over a single detonation that Ovek's translated casualty notes describe, with a flatness that somehow lands harder than hyperbole, as 70,000 dead in the time it takes to draw one breath. They did this to each other, Ovek says. And 3 generations later, their descendants built cities taller on the same coastline, slept in them, raised children in them. The species does not stop. It does not even seem to notice it's supposed to stop. Silence in the chamber now. Real silence. The kind with weight to it. I feel something shift in my own chest cavity. Not fear, not yet, but the first cold breath of a question I do not like. Show me the sleep data specifically, I say. Not the war record, the thing you claim we cannot explain. Ovek nods. The chamber goes white again. Reveal 1. A soldier on a 40-hour watch rotation. Brainwave telemetry scrolling beside his sleeping form. His eyes are closed. His breathing has slowed into the deep, regular rhythm every observed species associates with genuine unconsciousness. His trigger finger has not left the guard. He's dreaming, Ovek says. And the word lands strange in the chamber's cold air. Because we know the word, we have a word for it too. But we have never seen it paired with combat readiness before. REM sleep, full cortical disengagement by every metric we have, and his weapon hand never released its grip. Command's neuroscience division called this impossible in the initial report. Not unlikely. Impossible. They rewrote the finding 3 times. Reveal 2. A woman, A mother, the file notes, ranked by kinship data pulled from a captured census record, asleep in a chair beside a hospital bed. Machines around the small human in the bed beep at a rhythm too fast, too fragile. She has not left that chair in 6 days. Sleep deprivation studies on every other cataloged species show catastrophic cognitive collapse within 72 hours, Ovek says. Hallucination, organ failure, death, eventually, if pushed far enough. This subject remained lucid enough on day 6 to correct her own translator's grammar when it addressed her medically fragile child using the wrong pronoun. A ripple of something moves through the gallery. Not quite laughter, not quite awe. I don't have a name for it either. My throat sac, I realize distantly, has stopped pulsing amber altogether. Reveal 3, and this is the one that does it. This is the one that reaches into my thorax and twists. A pilot's cockpit. Some decades-old conflict. Human military designation redacted. The pilot has not slept in 11 hours. Command chatter crackles through the recovered audio. Human voices ordering him down, ordering him home. And he answers back. Ovek translates it flat, without embellishment, because the words don't need any. Negative. 2 of ours are still out there. I sleep when they're home. He does not land for 4 more hours. 1 vote, Ovek says, and his voice has gone very quiet. That's all it took in his own chain of command to send him back up. 1 officer said yes, and an exhausted human went back into the dark for 2 people he'd never meet again, because his species has apparently decided somewhere in its evolutionary history that rest is a thing you earn by finishing the job, not a thing you take before it. I have read 700 pages of human military doctrine. I have never read that line. It was never written down. Nobody had to write it down. The chamber is silent and I am silent with it. And somewhere in the base of my own skull a thought is forming that I do not want to have. That's either madness or the greatest evolutionary deception in the history of this galaxy. I reach for the effacement stone again. My claw closes around it and then the record plays anyway. Ensign, I say, and I hear my own voice come out sharper than I intend. You have shown this council 40 minutes of anecdote, isolated data points, battlefield anomalies. This is not evidence of anything but a species with an unusually stubborn nervous system. It is not evidence that they are worth remembering. I am aware, even as I say it, that I am no longer arguing from amber. I am arguing from something closer to gray fear dressed up in the language of procedure. Ovek seems to know it too. His throat sac has steadied, the shaking gone, replaced by something almost patient. You want a mechanism, he says. Not stories. Fine. He doesn't reach for the shard. He turns toward the chamber doors instead, and raises 1 clawed hand, and beckons. The doors open a second time. A human walks through them. I have seen humans before, in files, in recordings, in the flattened 2-dimensional photographs their own species is so fond of. I have never had one standing on the floor of the cradle chamber, and the effect is, I will be honest about this because a historian's first duty is honesty, even about her own reactions, disorienting. She is small, smaller than any of us, soft-skinned, no carapace, no visible defense at all, except the strange, unreadable calm on her face. Dr. Amara Osi, the shard's header, identifies her, lead researcher, Terran Sleep Study, Directorate Liaison for the last 4 years of the program's operation. She was brought in, Ovek explains quickly, under a standing agreement with the human government. One of a small handful of humans who know the Conquered exists at all, sworn to a confidentiality she has apparently kept for 4 years while her own species slept on. Unaware they were being studied like insects under glass, I want to feel contempt for her. I genuinely try. She looks up at 400 delegates staring down at her from tiered galleries built for beings 4 times her mass, and she does not flinch. You want to know why we couldn't finish the study? She says, and her translator renders it into our tongue a half-second late, so that for one strange moment I hear both her own voice and ours layered over each other, small and huge at once. I'll tell you, it's because you kept asking the wrong question. And what? I ask, my throat sac betraying me with a flicker of something too close to curiosity. Is the right one? You kept asking what makes human sleep so inefficient. Irregular hours. No species-wide synchronization, no fixed cycle. By every metric your researchers used, it looks broken. She lets that sit a moment. You never asked what it's for. Enlighten us, I say. And I do not mean it kindly, and she does not seem to care. You sleep as a species, she says. All of you together on a fixed cycle, guarded in shifts because your biology demands total unconsciousness and total vulnerability at the same time. And the only way you've survived that vulnerability for this long is by making sure someone's always awake to watch the rest of you. That's not a criticism. That's smart. That's the same trick herd animals have used on my planet for 100 million years. She takes a step forward. Small, soft, unarmored, and 400 delegates do not move. We didn't do that, she says. We couldn't do that. Too many of us spread too thin, too often in danger from each other as much as from anything else. So instead of evolving one big rule, we evolved 10 billion small ones. Every human alive is running their own private experiment in how little rest can I get away with and still protect the people I love. And every one of us runs it slightly differently, and none of us fully agree with each other about what's normal, and that's the answer. You couldn't find the pattern because there isn't one pattern. There's 8 billion of them, updating in real time, and the only rule that holds across every single version is, she stops. Looks up, past the front row of delegates all the way up to where I am standing, effacement stone still cold in my claw. We'll skip it if someone still needs us awake. Nobody in the chamber speaks. I look down at the black stone in my hand. 91,000 species reduced to tidy data shards. 91,000 endings I signed my name to because the math was always simple, always clean, always this species stopped being interesting the moment it stopped growing. And for the first time in 11 molts, I do not know what the math says. That is not a mechanism, I say finally quietly. That is a choice. Repeated 8 billion times, apparently without central coordination, for as long as your species has existed. Yeah, Dr. Osei says, and for the first time something that might be exhaustion, real, human, 4 years of secrets exhaustion, passes over her small, unarmored face. We noticed that too. Took us a while to say it out loud. Kind of scared us, honestly, once we did. The chamber does not vote right away. For a long moment, longer than protocol allows, longer than I have ever witnessed in 11 molts of sessions, nobody moves to reclaim the floor. 400 delegates sit in a silence so complete, I can hear the faint click of my own claw shifting against the effacement stone. Then, Delegate Prime Osanet Valthur, first segment, oldest member of this council, rises from the high bench. She has voted for every effacement in the last 40 years. I have never once seen her hesitate. She hesitates now. Archivist, she says, and her throat sac is doing something I have never seen it do, cycling, slow and uneven, through 6 colors at once, unable to settle. Play the sentry file again, the one with the trigger hand. Ovek does not ask why, he simply plays it. The soldier sleeps standing, brainwaves deep and slow, hand locked on the guard of his weapon, dreaming, actually dreaming, cortically disengaged, biologically vulnerable by every measure any of us understand. And somehow still, impossibly, ready. In 40 years, Delegate Prime says, I have voted to erase every species that could not survive its own limitations. Every species too fragile, too fractured, too undisciplined to protect itself. That has always been the standard. Fragility is forgettable. She looks at the frozen image, the sleeping, dreaming, ready soldier. I do not know what that is, but it is not fragility. It is something else wearing fragility's shape to make the rest of the galaxy underestimate it. She turns to the chamber. I move to reject the effacement, she says, and I move further, that we upgrade this species classification from Tier 9 insignificant to Tier 1, priority observation, pending full review. The chamber does not merely vote yes. The chamber erupts. Claws striking chitin in the old ascent rhythm, 400 delegates at once, a sound like a hailstorm against a hull, and I stand at the center of it holding a small black stone that will now never carry humanity's name, And I will put this in the historical record honestly because someone should. I feel relief. Not procedural relief. Not the relief of a difficult session concluding. The relief of having almost made a catastrophic, permanent mistake and being stopped in time by a species too stubborn to let itself be filed away quietly. I set the effacement stone down on the plinth, unused, and for the first time in 11 molts I do not pick it back up. The cradle chamber empties slowly, the way it always does after a long session. Delegates murmuring in clusters, throat sacs still cycling through the after-colors of a vote that shook something loose in all of us. I stay behind. So does Dr. Ose. So does Ovek, hovering near the door like he's still not sure he's allowed to be proud of himself. You could have led with the sentry footage, I tell her, once the chamber is nearly empty. You made us sit through the trench and the raft and the pilot before you got to the part that actually broke the vote. I know, she says, and there's something almost gentle in it, almost amused. You needed to see the pattern before you'd believe the mechanism. If I'd opened with, "We don't fully understand our own species either," you'd have written us off as unstable. Instead, you spent 40 minutes watching us refuse to fall down, over and over, in every possible circumstance, until unstable stopped being the word that fit. I settle onto the low bench beside the plinth, undignified probably for a chief archivist, but 11 molts of protocol suddenly feel very far away. 10 years, I say. 14 stations, 300 observers, and your own species never knew you were being studied at all. No, she agrees, which is, honestly, the part that should worry you most. I flick my throat sac at her, curiosity unshielded, the color I haven't shown a stranger in decades. Explain. You spent 10 years and 300 researchers trying to find the rule underneath human sleep, she says. And the truth is we don't know it either. We've never fully explained it to ourselves. Every culture on my planet's got its own theory. Every doctor's got a different chart. We just do it. We've always just done it. Whatever's underneath it was already running long before either of us started asking questions about it. Ovek, still hovering, finally speaks. So the mechanism High Command spent a decade and a classified budget trying to identify is that we made a decision a long time ago about who gets to rest and who doesn't, and we never bothered writing it down because it never occurred to us it needed writing down. Ose finishes. You built your whole civilization around synchronized, guarded unconsciousness because your biology demanded a system. We never got a system. We got each other instead. Turns out that scales a lot further than anyone expected, including us. I sit with that a while. The chamber lights have dimmed to their resting blue, and somewhere outside these walls a species I was, 4 hours ago, prepared to erase from memory forever, is going about an ordinary evening, sleeping in shifts nobody assigned, on schedules nobody synchronized, watching over each other for reasons nobody had to legislate. For what it's worth, I say finally, the conquered owes your species an apology it will probably never formally issue. We came very close to deciding you didn't matter enough to remember. Ose smiles. Small, tired, entirely unguarded. You wouldn't be the first, she says. We've survived worse verdicts than a committee, usually by staying up a little later than the thing trying to erase us expected. Ovek's throat sac flares a bright, unmistakable gold, the color in our species reserved for something between admiration and relief. Chief Archivist, he says, should I file the reclassification tonight or does it wait until morning? I look at the black effacement stone, still sitting untouched on the plinth, 91,000 endings deep and one entry short of 91,001. Tonight, I say, humanity's already awake somewhere. We may as well not fall behind.
Listen, if you enjoy the story, then please like and share the video and subscribe the channel. Your one click means a lot to us. Thanks for listening.